screen. All right, there we go. And Hillary, do you want to share your screen? We'll make sure we can keep the interpreter up.
All right, this is Hillary. Can everyone see my screen and the interpreter?
This is Terry. I cannot see the interpreter. I can see your screen. Oh, I see, if we toggle. And for those who are using the interpreter, I was doing some research last night with Zoom. If you right click on that little 3-dot thumbnail, you can pin the video. And then if you click on that with Lauren, the interpreter, only her video will show on your screen. But I think that we're good. I think we're ready to go. Okay. Let me get situated here. Okay, let's get started. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our presentation on an introduction to deaf blindness and the Virginia Project for Children and Young Adults with Deaf Blindness. We appreciate you joining us this morning. And excuse me, let me take a quick moment and, oh, sorry, I'm getting interrupted by my 6-year-old. I had a feeling that that would happen. I'm hearing some giggling in the background. So let me take a quick moment and introduce myself. My name is Terry Urban. I am the chair of Virginia Hands and Voices. I'm also the parent of 3 children. My oldest daughter is 9 years old and profoundly deaf, and I am joining today from outside of the Richmond area. We also have 2 presenters with us who are both from the Virginia Project for Children and Young Adults with Deaf Blindness, who I will introduce in a few minutes. So for those of you who are using Zoom for the first time, we have turned the video off and we have muted everyone during this presentation. However, you'll see a chat box that you're able to access if you click on the bottom of your screen. And feel free to type in any questions in there during our time together this morning, and we'll be sure to monitor that as we've allowed time at the end of our presentation for questions. For the folks who are utilizing remote conference captioning, that does need to be accessed in a separate window by clicking on the link provided, and we put that in the chat box as well. And then last,
Terry,
yep.
Sorry, this is Hillary. I think we lost the interpreter, just so we don't lose access.
Okay, hold on.
Unless that's, oh, there we go.
Okay. Did you find her? Okay, there we go. So we wanted to thank Civic Access for providing our video relay interpreting for those who have requested it. So thank you, Lauren, our interpreter, for joining us today. Before we begin, I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge all of us taking the time to be here this morning, despite of all the uncertainty in the world right now. We know that life has drastically changed for many of us regarding our jobs and our children being home from school. Mine are currently crawling around the floor around me, so I'm trying my best not to be too distracted. Oh, guys, please, give me a couple minutes, okay? So clearly this has put some constraints on us as we all are working in truly a virtual world. But we're trying to stay positive and focus on our mission of providing unbiased support and resources. And our state chapter of Hands and Voices, along with our national Hands and Voices, operates virtually anyways. So we're happy to still easily provide these supports to parents and professionals as we get through these times together and continue to practice social distancing. I'll let Hillary and Ira speak more about how today's climate changes their presentation slightly in just a moment. But I did want to say that personally, it's helped me to stay positive by trying my best to enjoy the time with my family, and also taking some time to join a conference call or a virtual presentation or a committee meeting when it comes to my involvement with Hands and Voices, because honestly, it feels good to go on with business as usual. Especially since our deaf and hard of hearing children need our support now, since they aren't receiving it in an educational setting. So that said, let's go ahead and get started. If you want to advance to the next slide, please. Here's our agenda for the next hour or up until 11 o'clock, and we're excited to go over what Hillary and Ira have prepared for us today. If you want to go to the next slide. So for those who aren't quite familiar with our organization, we would like to welcome you. Virginia Hands and Voices is a nonprofit, parent-driven organization dedicated to supporting families and children who are deaf and hard of hearing. What really makes us unique is that we are unbiased about communication modes and methodologies, and we believe that whatever choice a family makes is the right choice. Our outreach activities, parent professional collaboration, and advocacy efforts are focused on enabling deaf and hard of hearing children to reach their highest potential. So what do we do? Oh, if you can go to the next slide. Thank you. And I just got a text from someone that they're having trouble seeing the interpreter. If you can toggle through the videos that we have pulled up. You can kind of customize that on your screen so you do have the interpreter. Everyone else's videos are hidden except for the presenters and our interpreter. So what do we do locally and nationally? Well, we strive to provide resources to families and professionals across Virginia and the United States. You'll see on the screen, if you're joining us with that capability, you'll see that we have a map of the US on there, a small one, and each star that you see represents a Hands and Voices chapter. So almost all of our states do have chapters. We even have chapters in a few provinces in Canada and even a chapter in Africa. If you're joining us, and then if you can go to the next slide, please. If you're, or wait, no, I'm sorry, wait. Stay on this slide. This is my last part here. So if you are joining us via audio only today, some examples that we have up on the screen of what we do here locally include offering outreach activities and social opportunities. We help parents improve educational outcomes for their children, and we provide virtual learning opportunities such as this one. All right, enough of me talking. Let's go ahead. I'd like to introduce our presenters. So we have Hillary Hodes with us today. She is a technical assistant specialist, and Ira Paday is a project coordinator, both with the Virginia Project for Children and Young Adults with Deaf Blindness at the Partnership for People with Disabilities at Virginia Commonwealth University. We're excited to have you ladies present to our audience this morning about your work with the Deaf Blind Project. And like I said earlier before we get started, if you could please remember to state your name before speaking so our folks utilizing remote conference captioning are able to follow along, that would be great. So with that said, thank you for joining us again, and we will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Hi, this is Ira. Like Terry said, I'm the project coordinator for the Virginia Project for Children and Young Adults with Deaf Blindness, and that is a mouthful. So we usually our short name is just the Virginia Deaf Blind Project. And we are a federally funded project where, like Terry said, we are out of VCU's School of Ed's Partnership for People with Disabilities. We're located in Richmond, but we provide support to teams and families all throughout Virginia. And what we do is we provide training and technical assistance, which is basically the federal definition for consultation and training to educational teams, which obviously includes families of children with a combined vision and hearing loss. Next slide, please. So we, like in this uncertain time, we just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all for joining us and being enthusiastic about really supporting our children with who are deaf and hard of hearing. So we just wanted to acknowledge this enthusiasm and seeing so many of you here online on a Friday. Next slide, please. So one of the things with our Deaf Blind Project that we really try to share with everybody is what deaf blindness actually means. Oftentimes we don't get students identified as being deafblind because there's this myth that people assume that deafblind always implies that there's a total absence of vision and hearing. Probably the most famous person that we know who had deaf blindness was Helen Keller. And unfortunately, that is not who our child with deaf blindness now looks like in today's world. So actually the federal definition of deaf blindness means that there's a combined vision and hearing loss that impacts a child's education. So about 90% of our children birth to 22 who are considered deafblind under that federal definition actually do have some functional vision and hearing, and less than 10% are totally blind and totally deaf. And and that combined vision and hearing loss impacts a lot of things in our child's day-to-day. Next slide. So some etiologies that are considered to be synonymous with deafblindness, there are some hereditary syndromes. Charge syndrome is probably the most common within deafblindness. It is currently the leading cause of deafblindness. Usher syndrome, type 1, 2, and 3 are also synonymous with deafblindness. Down syndrome, although not all children who have Down syndrome are considered deafblind, we just like to put that in there because there is a possibility that a child with Down syndrome could have a combination of deafness and blindness that could impact their education. Some prenatal or congenital complications include cytomegalovirus or CMV, meningitis, microcephaly, hydrocephaly, congenital rubella. Although rubella is eradicated in the United States, there are still some countries outside of the US that it's still prevalent. And if a child is to be adopted from one of those countries, that was caused by, and their deafblindness was caused by rubella, we just like to keep that in there because it still could easily be a reason for that deafblindness. And more commonly now, Zika is also one of those warnings, some of those that just to be aware that deafblindness can be caused by Zika. So with that combination of vision and hearing loss, those are our distance senses. So when we have limited access to our vision and hearing, it impacts a lot of things, including communication, exploration, mobility, engagement, participation, our relationships from day to day, our memory, concept development, independence, and distance learning. When we think about it, we use our distance senses every day. Most of the materials that our children have in school are being accessed through vision and hearing. So when that is limited, our child with deafblindness, their access is only limited to how far they can see, hear, and the reach of their arm. So it really impacts almost all of our day-to-day. Next slide, please. So this is what we like to call the pyramid of learning. On the left-hand side, this is a pyramid of learning for a typical child with normal hearing and normal vision. So the most impactful way our children learn who don't have any sensory impairments is through incidental learning. Now, incidental learning means that they are learning through observations in our environment. Probably a really common example of incidental learning that we all have experienced is if our little ones pick up a toy, put it to their ear, and pretend to have a conversation. It's that incidental learning. They've seen us pretend to have these conversations on the phone. Secondary learning is when you get information through a secondary source, like reading a book or a teacher lecturing in front of the classroom. And probably the least amount of, not least amount, but not a big percentage of our learning for somebody who is typical is through direct learning, which is hands-on. So for a child with deafblindness, that pyramid is completely flipped over. So incidental learning and secondary learning are not as impactful. And so they need more of that hands-on direct learning in order for them to learn. So the reason why we really encourage children to be identified as deafblindness is because this way they can get that access to direct learning as opposed to incidental learning or secondary learning. And that can help them to understand more of those concepts, build communication, and learn, which is what we all want our kids to do. So what we offer from the Virginia Project for Children and Young Adults with Deaf Blindness is we have family support from our project's family engagement specialist. We work with teams to provide on-site, although not so much on-site right now currently with what's going on, but more of that virtual coaching. We are still working, and we are always available to you through Zoom and any type of virtual coaching and consultation. We can provide training on deafblind specific strategies when it comes to communication, engagement, and access to the general ed curriculum. We have an access to network of parents of children with deaf blindness in Virginia, especially with our family engagement specialist. We have a free lending library of books, videos, and other resources. And we have online training modules that focus on a variety of topics that impact a child with deaf blindness. We have connections to many national and state family organizations, the National Foundation, the National Family Association of Deaf Blindness, the Charge Syndrome Foundation, which is a national foundation, the Usher Syndrome Foundation, and Ava's Voice. So what we're currently working on with the Virginia Deafblind Project is the child count. So we are federally required to keep a child count of individuals in the state under the age of 22 who meet that federal criteria of deaf blindness. Now, this means that the child does not necessarily have to have deaf blindness as their primary eligibility category. But if they have a vision and hearing loss, like we said before, that impacts their access to education, they can be considered to be deafblind and on our census. So looking at how many, this is kind of like a snapshot of what, how many students there are within our state and compared to the national average. As you can see, we have oftentimes that we don't get children identified until they start school age. Oftentimes it's during the SOL time that teams kind of say, oh, there's something's not quite right. And that's when our child gets identified with either vision or hearing. And so what we're right now working on is really increasing our birth to 5 numbers too, because it's so important to start that access to communication and understanding deaf blindness at a really early age. So we're really working on that, and our numbers have definitely increased over the years, and it's definitely because of partners like you who allow us to come in and talk about what our project does. Next slide, please. So some frequently asked questions about whether a child can be referred to us. If a child has a vision loss but does not receive vision services, can they still be on the child count? Yes, as long as it's stated in the IEP that the vision and or hearing impacts their access to education, they can be on our child count and receive support. And if there is a vision or hearing loss suspected, but it's not diagnosed yet, can they still be on our child count? And the answer again is yes. So when you fill out our child count form, there is an option that says further testing needed under vision or hearing. And that child can be on our child count for up to 1 year while the team works on getting that diagnosis. And for that 1 year, the family and the team can receive that support from the Virginia Deafblind Project. So we don't work directly with children, but we do work with teams, and we help them to provide that support. So for example, the team will go have a training on communication, and then we can provide that on-site or virtual coaching to correctly help implement those strategies that the team has learned. Next slide. So if you would like some more information on our child count or our census. We have a webinar through the Integrated Training Collaborative that's also hosted at the partnership. There is a webinar called Census and Censusability that will help you to understand what vision or hearing can look like for a child with deafblindness and how to refer them to our project. So that is available to you whenever you'd like. And so if you'd like to get connected with our project, we have professional development opportunities. Our child count is still ongoing right now. So if you, after listening to us, if you think your child or a child that you work with is suspected of having that combined vision and hearing loss, you can always contact us. We have our Google Sites available that has our contact information. And we also have a Virginia Deafblind Educators community that is designed for educators who work within Virginia for students with deafblindness. We have monthly web conferences and online resources. So if you'd like to sign up for that, there is a link for Google Forms. And I'm going to send it over to Hillary.
All right, thank you, Ira. So we are going to shift gears a little bit now and talk about early pre-linguistic communication. And one of the reasons that we're excited about this collaboration as Hands and Voices is because like you, we believe in finding the best choice to match a student and don't tend to focus on one type of communication over another. And when we got started talking about the idea of this collaboration, we thought, well, one group that can be hard to figure that out for are these early communicators. We'll spend a little time looking at some strategies and who these communicators are, and recognizing that this would be a huge topic for an entire course, let alone one full hour, let alone just a part of an hour. So knowing that this is really the beginning of a conversation rather than a snapshot, rather than anything much more comprehensive. And to start with, I want to get a better sense of what you think of when you hear this term so that we can start to have a shared understanding. So I'm going to ask you for just about a minute or so here to add to what you think of when you hear early pre-linguistic communication. And you can do that either by typing into the chat box, which I'm going to pull up on the side here. I'm not sure if that shows up on your screen when I do that. And then also by using the annotation tool. And to use the annotation tool, you should be able to click on View that shows up in the menu bar at the top. And then there's an option that says Annotate, which should pop up a little toolbar and give you the option to type in, to draw a picture, to embed a picture, whatever it may be there. And yeah, I'm going to stop talking now for a minute, and if you would just share some of your thoughts in the room.
Hillary, this is Terry. Are you able to see the chat box? We're getting a bunch of comments here that are popping up in the chat. And for those of you who can't access the chat, if you just hover your mouse on the bottom of the screen, you'll see the little chat icon.
Great, thank you, Terry. And I'll give just another few moments for that. If you are just on audio, some of the ones coming in are babbling, pointing, gestures, using informal gestures or vocalization. I'm missing the end of that one. Oh dear, sorry. Babies crying when they are hungry, the stage before learning formal expression, facial expressions. The stage before learning formal language. Great, and so it's really helpful, subtle movements, one more there. It's really helpful to get a sense of what we're thinking about. And I think it's really interesting that what this group mentioned was lots of different ways that we can communicate in a way before language. And I know Ira and I even had a conversation, well, what exactly is pre-linguistic? Because we often work with early communicators. And linguistic, it speaks to that language piece. And we know language has that abstract meaning. It has rules and a grammar structure. And that can happen in different forms in ASL or spoken language or written language, even picture symbols. But really it involves those more complex ideas around an abstract symbol and grammar structure and rules. So we're thinking about who is included in the group before we're using some of that. And these were some great examples to get started. Oh, let me see if then, of course, now I don't know how to get rid of the annotation. I knew we could do it. I am sorry about that. Okay, hopefully it'll pause with us there and stay on this screen. All right, so one way that we can start to think about the children who are early communicators is with an assessment. An assessment can carry a more formal or intimidating representation, but it's really just a way to help us think about who a child is as a communicator. And we like to use the communication matrix. And the communication matrix is a tool that we're happy to talk to you more about. Here's just a quick snapshot of it. And it uses 7 levels of communication that start with what someone already mentioned, that pre-intentional behavior, where a child is responding to either something internal in the environment, but not trying to communicate something with us. Through when that behavior starts to become intentional, more unconventional communication, through early symbols that are really concrete, beginning to think about abstract symbols. And then for this particular assessment, stops when we hit language of 2 to 3 phrases. Of course, we know our children continue to grow and develop beyond that, but then we can use a different tool to assess them or start to think about them as more traditional communicators. And then we can also think about why a child communicates or why we communicate. And this tool uses 4 basic functions. How do we refuse or reject something that we wouldn't want? What strategies are being used to obtain or get something you want? Social communication, and then information. And if you look at the communication matrix, information doesn't even start until conventional communication at level 4. And when we think about early communicators, how often are we either providing information that we are assuming they're processing, or are we asking them to share information and maybe they're still working at those earlier levels? And so again, this is just one way to start to organize our thinking around that. There's a link at the bottom if you're interested in more information, or please reach out to us. We'd be happy to continue this conversation with you. Oh dear, and I am sorry, I do not know how to get rid of our leftover annotations. If anybody has a tip, maybe you can let me know in the chat box. So as I mentioned, we had a lot come up in our conversation and the initial what you think of with an early pre-linguistic communicator around different forms. And my guess is we have a few speech language pathologists in the group as well. When we start to think more specifically about what form is a good match for a child who's communicating at this early level, speech therapist is a fantastic partner to think through that and share their expertise. And we can think about those both in terms of non-symbolic forms and symbolic forms. And here's just two examples of what that might look like with tactile objects or tactile symbols. Oh, thank you. Sorry, I saw come through a way to get rid of those. Sorry. We can think about that either in terms of symbolic or non-symbolic. And for non-symbolic, that's when we're really using the object that would be part of an activity or routine. So we see the example here where it might be the actual milk carton that a child is using in their cereal versus a tactile symbol where the symbol is going to be more representative and have more of a symbolic form to it. It might either be a part of something, but the child still has to make that connection, or it might just be an abstract symbol that represents an activity or an object or a person. So chances are also, if you are here, you are thinking about a specific child who is an early communicator. And if you are thinking about that child, chances are you're one of their primary communication partners, if not their primary communication partner. And while we engage naturally with so many typical conversations, although that might be shifting rapidly for us as we make our own adjustments in today's world, when we're thinking about communicating with an early communicator, there's some really intentional strategies and steps that we can use. And this list comes from a new resource that was put out by our National Deafblind Collaborative, and there's a link there at the bottom around some practice guides that are coming out. Often when we start working with a team, we start with this idea of building a trusted relationship. I know when Ira talked to us about some of the challenges of a child who doesn't have access completely to their distant senses, a lot of it has to do with not knowing who or what is in their environment. And so starting from a place of trust is really the foundation for communication and learning. And so here are some strategies and tips we can use that we're going to take a look at in some videos coming up. And I think, again, recognizing that our challenges are changing daily as we get used to social distancing and having kids at home, that idea of being fully present with an early communicator might feel especially challenging, but it's so important for that child to learn that they can share their communication and share their ideas with the world. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, waiting, being available, and working slowly through activities. So keep an eye out for some of those as we look at some examples of strategies in the next few videos.
Hillary, this is Terry. I can interrupt quickly. Could you go back to that last slide and copy that link at the bottom and post it into the chat room?
Yes. I'm going to ask Ira if you're able to do that from an offline version. I'm afraid I think I would have to escape from presenter mode instead of advancing the slide. But we will get that link in there, and we can also share the PowerPoint afterwards with all of these links. Thank you, Terry. All right. So a lot of times we've heard that we need to use this strategy called wait time. I know even just a few minutes ago when I was trying to use wait time, as people were typing in some of their ideas, a minute can feel like a really long time. And when we're sitting with a child, even those seconds can feel like a long time. And that's really what our job is, to wait. But the reason we're waiting is because that child is processing. And that processing might include processing what's going on in the environment, who they're communicating with, what's expected next. If there is some expressive or communication they want to share out, organizing those ideas. And then organizing how that physically gets produced. Is it a movement? Is it a vocalization? So while we're waiting, that processing that's happening includes so many things, and that's why it's so important. So fingers crossed this is queued up right where it should be. And as you're watching here, also keep an eye out for how the communication partner is available and accessible to the student. No, sorry.
And providing her with enough wait time so that she may become an active participant and request more of her.
Hillary, this is Ira. It's not showing up.
You can't see the video at all?
Mm-mm.
Oh. Oh.
There it is. Yeah.
Is that better?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And so we saw in that video that the adult is giving the child that wait time, and then also so attuned and focused on her movements that she notices the really subtle leg shift there and acknowledges it, letting the child know, I'm here with you, I see that, and I know that was your communication. And I know that video can feel long to watch with the pauses, but that's the reality of it. We also see that the communication partner has her legs available. She's in close proximity to the student so that the student knows she's there and ready, listening. Oh, okay. And I'm going to keep it in this mode for just a moment so we can get to the next video. Another strategy that we can use with our early communicators is joint attention. And joint attention is usually around an object, and it's for something tangible. And it's when we're recognizing what features a child is noticing and showing that we notice them too, that we're sharing our attention on the interesting parts of what that child notices. And here again, that communication partner has the calm pace and wait time. She's very attuned and noticing the child's reaction, waits for the smell, just to know that she's smelled by her smile, and then is really creative in how she shows, oh, I see you liked that feature, the scent. Look at me noticing it too. And you get the sense that this comes from having done this activity before and knowing that that's a feature that she liked and sharing it together. We often see reciprocal turn-taking as a way to build early communication. And this, we're going to start with a little bit more traditional or formal of an example in just a few quick seconds of this, and then look at how it might be a little different for a really early communicator or for somebody who's using more behaviors or movements as their form of communication. Oh, sorry. Oh, dear. And so we do see the child is using some more formal forms of communication, more traditional gestures, but still engaged in that babbling. And the dad here is adding intention to that babbling and showing, oh, I see what you're trying to communicate. And eventually over time that can build more meaning and encourage that child to share their thoughts and ideas in more advanced ways along the way. And then our last example here, we see a young man with deaf blindness. And so there again, you see a communication partner who's really focused on noticing what the child is, or here we have a young adult, is doing to communicate and building it into an interaction where it might have been just an activity for the child before. And for children who are really early communicators or who sometimes might seem like they're very involved in their own body and movements, this can be a way to turn some of that into communication in terms of just the turn-taking part of it. And especially with kids with combined vision and hearing loss, making this something that has that close proximity and gives someone access to seeing how other people are involved in their world can be a strong foundation for early communication. And my guess is if there's some of us who have taken part in that kind of communication exchange, you've noticed that it has this really strong authenticity to it that can feel much more connected than even just a basic conversation and be such a powerful way to start to build communication with one of our early communicators. So knowing that we only have an hour together, and knowing that this is, again, just a brief snapshot of early communication and the beginning of a conversation rather than a whole component of it, I want to pause now and have a chance for questions from you guys or comments of what this might have looked like in your families or your work, or any other ideas that you wanted to share with the group. So I don't know if, Terry, at this point, I can turn it back over to you, or we can just keep an eye on the chat box think if it's all right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen just to have a little better access to everyone.
Sure, and this is Terry here. We'll keep everyone muted. So if everyone does want to take advantage of typing your question into the chat box, please go ahead and do that. Again, you can hover your mouse at the bottom of the screen and you'll see the little chat icon and it'll pop it up. We'll give it a few minutes there. It looks like Trisha has raised her hand. Go ahead, Trisha, if you want to go ahead and type your comment into the box or question. Okay, there we go. So we have a comment. I have seen the video with the child and dad, but it's such a great reminder to engage with children no matter what age or issues they may have. Thanks for a great presentation. Stay safe. Anyone else? This is Terry. Trisha, I see that you have your hand raised. I'm not sure.
Hey, this is Hillary. She's phone only. Can we unmute for a moment?
That's what I'm gonna ask to, I just asked permission to show her video. And it looks like she's unmuted. We do have another comment. A therapist explained one time that every time you speak a request, that it causes the child's brain to start trying to process over and over again, not giving them the chance to fully process and react. I found that so helpful to think of it like that. Thanks, Dawn. Trisha, you are unmuted if you want to go ahead and add something.
Yes, I was having technical difficulties living in the very rural area that we're in, and we're working from home. So I missed the first part of the session and wanted to know if I could go back in and watch that to catch the first part of it.
Yes, this is Terry. Absolutely. We're recording this presentation right now, and within about a week or so, we should be able to have it up on our website. Ira and Hillary, if you feel comfortable sharing your presentation with us, we can also upload that to our website. We also save the transcripts from the remote conference captioning, and we'll have that on our website as well. So yes, you'll absolutely be able to access all of it. Just be patient with us as we get it uploaded there.
Thank you so much. This was also my first time using Zoom, so I had to kind of work through it.
This is Terry. Yeah, we all are. We all are. We become experts as we go along, right?
So Courtney had a question. Thank you for the information. A friend of mine has a Braille teacher who's moving away, trouble finding a new one. She said it is easy to find ASL instructors, but not Braille. Do you have any tips of where to search? She is in another state, not Virginia. So Courtney, I'm not sure if your friend is working with a student with deaf blindness, but part of our network, each state in the United States has a deafblind project. So I would recommend going, I'm going to type in the nationaldb.org, which is our National Center on Deaf Blindness, and it has a link to all of the state deafblind projects, so she can contact their state, that particular state deafblind project. Information on teachers of the visually impaired or access to Braille instruction.
Thanks, Ira. There's another comment up here. This is Terry. I'm supporting teacher teams that work with students with more significant disabilities. I have found success in helping them plan with anticipation, motivation, communication, and confirmation in mind as they plan.
This is Hillary. Those are some great points. And if you're ever looking for resources to share with those teams, we do have some great ones around anticipation and anticipation calendars, as well as just ways to think about preferences and communication as well. So we hope you would share your resources with us, and we're happy to share ours with you as well.
All right, and this is Terry. It looks like there's another comment. The individual might also reach out to AER in your region, as they may have info for TVIs. Does anybody else have any questions or comments out there? That was great, Hillary and Ira. It was very informative. I loved that slide with the pyramid. That was, you know, a good kind of affirmation of how children do learn best.
Oh, that's sorry. I was trying to share our contact information one more time, and did I delete this?
This is Terry again. We have another chat. It was sent privately, indicating that someone would love to have information regarding the anticipation, motivation, and communication resources. Turn my video on. Hi, I'm Terry. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add? Thanks, ladies. Good info. The pyramid slide was insightful. Stay safe. That seems to be the tagline of the weeks here. Stay safe out there. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and close, but if anybody does have anything to add, then by all means, please go ahead and add it to the chat. So that will conclude our virtual learning opportunity today. Thanks again, Hillary and Ira, for sharing your time and your expertise with us. And we'd like to thank again Lauren and Civic Access for providing us with video relay interpreting today, and the Virginia Department for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing and its Virginia Relay for providing remote conference captioning through Hamilton Relay. Lastly, I want to thank everyone for joining us today from across the Commonwealth and supporting Virginia Hands and Voices. I also wanted to add that next Wednesday, April 1st at 8 p.m., we are hosting our first ever virtual happy hour for parents only, to really just offer an hour of time for us to come together and to connect as a community and to spend some time with others than we are quarantined with. We certainly are looking forward to that here. You're welcome to bring your beverage of choice to come join us. So please, if you're a parent and you're on this call, we'd love to have you. And if you work with parents and you're on this call, then please pass along information. There is no agenda for that meeting. We're just going to get together. We'll have our cameras on or cameras off if you prefer, and just kind of talk about what's going on and how we best can support our children as they're isolated from their peers and their supports. That's it. Registration information can be found on our website and on our Facebook page. And then going forward, if there is a topic that you'd like us to present on virtually, please drop us a line and let us know your idea. This is our 5th virtual learning opportunity that we've done, and they have all kind of come about as requests from parents and professionals across the state, or agencies coming to us wanting to partner with us to help get their information out to everyone. So please, if you have an idea and you think it's something that you would want us to present on, we would be more than happy to try and make it work, and we would love to hear from you. And what else? I'm seeing something else in the chat. Can you send that to me to share with our families? The family happy hour. Yes, Mary, absolutely. I will share it to you right now when we hang up the phone. So that concludes our presentation. And thank you everyone for joining us. And we look forward to connecting again soon. To end on a positive note, the sun is shining, the birds are chirping, the grass is turning green. There will be no snow this year, but spring is here and summer around the corner. So I'm gonna go find my children. Hopefully they have not destroyed my house too much in the past hour that I've been on this call. And I look forward to seeing everyone soon. So thank you again for joining us. Have a good day, have a good weekend. Take care.